Stand Up Nation. How we doing, fam? Standing up? Yeah, you know. Um, Dice and Kinison. I think we had a great discussion about Andrew Dice Clay and Sam Kinison in class last week. Um, and the comments were on par with that. Just, just reading the levels of disgust from you was was fun for me. Um, I always start this discussion with an apology. You know, I apologize to those of you who were not fans of that and felt sort of held hostage by me um, assigning those two comedians. But at the same time, I appreciate you guys pushing through all of the bullshit of it to get to a larger point, right? A couple of you mentioned I kept waiting for it to get funny. I thought it was going to be like jokes. Like this, you see what I did there? Like, you have. I don't. I think if anything else, or if nothing else, it should help put into perspective how good comedy is, or it should really cement the difference between comedy and good comedy that I've been talking about the whole semester. And this, I think, makes it abundantly clear in bold type. Like, oh, I see now. Right? You can do it either way, but which one is more sort of empowering or fulfilling? Um, I think all of you who watched that now see what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's a little trick. It's a little kind of like shady trick of mine. But it shouldn't. I don't want you to think that that was this sort of this the fringe on the fringes of stand-up comedy in the '80s. I don't want you to think that because it was huge. And we talked about it a little with Eddie Murphy, how he sort of was ushering this in and making it popular, and then guys like Kinison and Dice Clay, among many others, just sort of like really latched on to the ignorance and the negativity and the shock part more than most, and rode it to great heights. Um, I mentioned this. Dice sold out MSG like in 10 minutes or something, and had this very uh, very sharp um, ascent to fame as a result of exactly what you saw. Like if you think, oh, he got popular after he changed his act, you're wrong. He didn't change anything. He actually doubled down on most of his just the misogyny and the homophobia and the cursing and the cigarette thing. He does this the whole cigarette dance. Like people lost their shit when he did that. They thought that was the fucking best thing ever. That and the nursery rhymes and the big fucking leather jackets and all this shit. The nursery rhymes like were just like I can't even explain it. Like people lost their shit when he did them. And they're like again, just so dumb. But you get it, right? Like they're nursery rhymes that that we grew up with, but they're like dirty. So you see what I did there. And I'm glad that most of you saw what I was doing there. If nothing else, it should make you appreciate good comedy even more. Hopefully, that's the major takeaway. So I'll run through a bunch of stuff that I mentioned in class that we kind of talked about, and then go through your comments as per usual. Um, there's this distinct feeling, and we talked about this with Eddie Murphy, that this distinct feeling of fear, right, that men were feeling in the 80s. Fear of, advancing communities that they didn't want to advance, particularly women and homosexuals. That was they were putting their foot down. These, especially white men, but men in general, and it's reflected in their comedy. They're defending something. Uh, all the jokes come off as defensive and combative. Just like, I'm not gonna let you, gay guy, I'm not gonna let you have sex with me. Like, well, he probably doesn't want to do that in the first place, right? Women, I'm not gonna let you take my job or like have a voice or anything like that. So there's that defensive feeling. It's palpable. Like, it's Dice, I think, more than Kinison or Eddie Murphy. With Dice, it's like something happened to him, right? I can't remember which one you commented, but there might be something really wrong with him. Like, all of this stuff is indicative of something like that. Um, it's just it's very sad to me, or telling at least, in the very opening of Dice's set when he's doing the fucking rap. He references Carlin and Pryor, and like basically saying Carlin and Pryor are great, but in the 80s it's all about Dice. That I don't even know what that is. I think he's trying to put himself like, hey, this is what they did too, but like he's not doing what they did. Like, we know that, and you can reference them all you want, but what you're doing is a bastardization of what they did. Like, you can't even talk about them in the same sentence, even though I am doing that currently. So I've always said Carlin, and I don't know if maybe he did say this, Carlin or Lenny Bruce or Richard Pryor would say about Andrew Dice Clay, like, you're doing it wrong. Like, that's just the sentiment that I get. You're doing it wrong, dude. And the whole Cosby bit that Murphy does, but you can't just go out on stage and say filth, flarn, filth. And Eddie Murphy's like, you're right. Like, nobody can do a show where you just go out and you say fuck, shit, ass, suck my dick, suck my big black stuff. Like, here comes Andrew Dice Clay, hold my beer, right? He's like, yeah, I can. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Is just go out. That was shock comedy. But Bill Hicks would sort of correct a lot of that by being like, no, redefining shock comedy. So there's almost too much to go into with these two. A lot of you made the connections between the two, like Dice was the worst, except Alex. Alex, you thought Dice was hilarious. I think it's hilarious in an ironic way. Dice, looking back, I'm like, just that this was a thing is hilarious to me. But most of you drew the line between Dice and Kinison very clearly. Like Kinison relied on a lot of the same tactics, but he seemed to have a little bit more depth, especially with the stuff about religion, concerning his background in the church and being a preacher, and blurring the line between those two things. And I've said this before, but what is a comedian if not an atheist priest? Um, so you made those connections, which were good. Kinison, I think Kinison did have a little more depth, and tried to explore some things, but got wrapped. He was a drug addict, complete like junkie. So he was literally out of his mind a lot of times. But the scream, a bunch of you said, like the scream just it muddled anything that he was trying to say. And like Dice's nursery rhymes, Kinison's scream is what people came to see. They came to see him go, ow, ow. And you're welcome for not actually doing the scream. They came to see that. And, he fell into the trap that entertainers have fallen into since the beginning of time, which is, oh, you like this? Okay, I'm going to do it more and louder and faster, and it's going to take over my existence. I'm going to be the scream guy. And it was like eventually his career would fizzle, and he would just be going on stage and screaming at people. Um, so my notes are kind of all over the place. There's this. Who talked about it? I think it was Allison. Yeah, Allison brought up this idea, and we talked about it in class too. Like how Dice is basically just perpetuating ignorance with his stuff, and it's the ignorance of like a fucking seventh grade kid, right? Who just doesn't know anything, and his parents aren't really telling him anything about. He's just learning about women and gay people and how to treat them and how to relate to them from either the media or, you know, shitty parents or friends or whatever who are ill informed. And Dice is just sort of perpetuating that kind of shit by almost glorifying it on stage in the 80s. So, like, think about the way he talks about homosexuality. Can't even talk about it like an adult. He reads off a list of homophobic slurs that it seems as though he just read off the bathroom stall at his middle school. Like, he uses Faggotron, which is the planet where gay guys come from. I don't know if you guys knew that. Yeah. Butt Slammer, Hershey Highway, Baloney, Pony, and Cock Jockey. Like, really? It just plays into this fear thing, right? And he's terrified that people are gonna, think he's not masculine. I don't even know where it comes from, but he just reverts us back to this adolescence almost, this adolescent ignorance that is, it's almost excusable when you're 12 or 13 years old and you just don't fucking know anything. But he's not doing anything to help that, to change that. He's sort of giving credence to it almost. Like, he just runs through all the hits, right? All the homophobic hits. This is a big point. Murphy, Kinison, and Dice all use this little little trick. It's not really a trick, but and they say, "Now I love women." Right? They'll preface a joke or a bit or a part of their act by saying, "Now I love women. Don't get me wrong. Like I'll fuck them all." Like that kind of yeah. I love women, but here comes a bit about how women are pieces of shit and should be eradicated, basically. They use "now I love women" in the same way racists use "I'm not racist." I'm not racist, but here is something super racist that I'm going to say now. Right? Now I love women, but here is something completely misogynistic that I'm going to say now. I'll use it in the same way. And that's pretty frightening because you can say all you want. Like your actions speak to speak more to who you are than your words in most cases. Um, Holly made this point in class, and I was very grateful and proud because it's a great connection that I started to put together for teaching this, you know, a handful of years ago. But the connection between Trump and Andrew Dice Clay, like both of their meteoric rises to relevance or power, they're eerily similar. In fact, Dice has Dice went on, I don't know what it was, one of the late night talk shows, Colbert or Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or whatever. And he said, like, this is in the midst of the Trump presidency. He's like, Donnie stole my act. And he's exactly right. Just this appealing to a group of people that is terrified that they're going to lose their power, right? And appealing to them how? With misogyny, homophobia, negativity, ignorance, bigotry. Like that's exactly like Trump got to the White House by convincing white men that they're the persecuted ones and that these black people, these gay people, these women are coming for your power. This used to be your country, like all that kind of stuff. And he's straight up an insult comic. If you saw any of the debates from his presidential run, like he literally stood on stage and went down the line. Not at all. And like Dice standing in the crowd pointing people out and making fun of them. He'd go down the line of candidates and be like, "You're fat, your wife's ugly, you're dumb," little Marco Rubio, giving him nicknames like a fucking toddler. Not even a toddler. Not even a toddler. So making that comparison, Holly made the comparison in class before I could even bring it up, and I again was psyched about that. It's scary how closely those two sort of moves were um, were similar, and cashing in on the same concepts of fear and paranoia and negativity and you know resistance to difference or otherness. And it's really the whole he tells it like it is, right? Like that's what people were saying about Dice at the time. I was like, well, you got to give it to him. He tells it like it is. I'm like, no, I don't have to give it to him because he doesn't tell anything. Same with Trump. They said that about Trump. He tells it like it is. Like, does he though? Uh, but the male fear of emerging marginalized communities is what is at the root of all of it, and that's it's frightening, so to speak. And wrapped up in that, I mean, it's probably a fucking psychological type or disorder, but wrapped up in this fear is you create this character, this persona that's opposed at all costs to humility. Like you can never admit you're wrong. You can never admit that someone is smarter than you or better than you or whatever, or that someone else has a good idea. All credit has to go to you, and this sort of narcissism that both people embody, and delusional about your own greatness, right? Dice saying, "Oh, I'm the fucking best." Yeah. Well, you're not. And Trump had the same thing. So the more you dig into that, the kind of scarier it gets. Um, and I wrote this: the difference is in what they're angry about. Dice versus, I don't know, Carlin. Carlin was angry about shit, right? But he was angry about shit that mattered to everybody. He was angry about the government. He was angry about racism. He was angry about, you know, all that kind of religion, all this bullshit, all this stuff that has an adverse effect on people everywhere. What's what is Dice uh, angry about? Hairy guys having hairy asses? Gay people, women, like what? Um, yeah, that's a lot of stuff. And then Kinison, I said, like, I think the stuff he does with comedy versus religion, comedian versus preacher, I think is interesting. And to, can't remember who said it, but like, he could have done more with that. I think Matt said that. Like, he definitely could have, but we'd be here all day if we were going to talk about, well, this comedian could have done this joke, especially, 40 years removed or whatever. But I agree with Matt in that regard. It would have been, I think, interesting to see him dial back the scream and really get into some of his experiences and things like that. But that wasn't popular at the time, right? That didn't suit Kinnison's needs. Um, Essentially, it's just a different gospel, right? At the end of the day, the preacher versus the comedian is just a different gospel that they're preaching. Um, yeah, I wrote down the question. Gee, where do you guys think all this misogyny came from that we have now? Where do you think it came from? It didn't just pop up out of nowhere, right? Um, so getting to your comments, Eric Eric touched on this idea that I kind of talked about, which is like if you if you refuse to grow in with the culture it'll it will purge itself of you. I, I think so. So Dice Clay is a perfect example. Like skyrockets to fame, and when he gets there, he what does he do with it? Nothing. He does the same thing, and within 3 or 4 years, no one cares about you anymore. They figured you out. You're done. And he kind of got spit out the back end of the entertainment industry as a result. He refused to change. He refused to. I mean, he could even be the Dice Man character and not just do shitty material. No one ever told him that, I guess. But I wrote the culture will purge itself eventually, especially if you don't grow and evolve. And again, give your material some depth and and context and search for truth, right? I think that's sort of the takeaway there. Um, Michael connected um, Dice with Lisa Lampanelli, who we did. We talked about her a little bit at the beginning. She was in the Lenny Bruce documentary about fuck anybody who doesn't get it, like that shit. She's retired as a comedian. We just watched Lisa Lampanelli in my funny women class. Um, so I was talking about this today in another video. I think the comparisons are apt, and what I'm confused by is from a woman's perspective, like Lisa Lampanelli is a perfect example of I should be able to do what Dice does just because he does it and I'm a woman and I can do what men do. I was like, but why would that be the thing that you choose to do that men do? To stick it to them, right? Like it seems like an odd choice, an odd battleground for equality is how much of an asshole can you be, right? Like, and Lisa Lampanelli takes that to another level. Because I think Amy Schumer does this. Like Amy Schumer fights for the right for women to be assholes for true equality. I've said that many times. But Lisa Lampanelli is isn't fighting that same thing. The same way Dice wasn't, right? Dice was doing nothing but being shocking to be shocking. And again, all the stuff you guys mentioned, like cop out, easy, cheap, shallow humor, which is all of it is true. And um, I thought the comparison with Lisa Lampanelli was right on right on point. Um, Freddie, we talked about this last week too. Too much punching down, right? Here's a white male, like like comedian who would be really famous, mocking all these communities that you know that don't have the same advantages that he does. So it's 100% punching down. Every joke is about somebody lower than him, and that just makes you a dick. I said this before. Um, Punching up is sort of fighting for your equality. And again, if we're going to use that analogy, punching down is fighting to maintain your power, right? This is what we talked about before. You punch down because you're afraid. You feel like you're fighting for your life or whatever it is. Drew mentioned this in class. I thought it was a good point. The Dice Rush Limbaugh thing, or any conservative, like alt-right commentator or personality, right? Um, Presenting this notion of the model man, um, and how anything outside of that, anything different from or other than the model man, you know, is beneath them. And we have to be sure everyone understands that, right? That's Dice, especially. Um, Allison, I talked about her point about you. She made a point about where she grew up, and semi-conservative. A lot of the adults grew up in the '80s, like me, and they were exposed to Dice and all these kinds of ideas, like in all the negative derogatory terms, where they come from, and how they're perpetuated, and how Dice kind of helped with that. And Courtney, this was a good point. If I can read it, comedy shouldn't be an excuse to be an asshole. And you can almost tell, like Dice was like, "Wait, I'm a comedian. That's how I can be an asshole without repercussions." Lisa Lampanelli, I can be an asshole without repercussions. Sam Kinison, there's any number of other of comedians that do the same, but that's not what it's for. Right? That's sort of the misinterpretation of what Bruce and Carlin and Pryor and those guys did before them. It's like that's not why we did it. It was so you could be an asshole for a living. Um, so comedy shouldn't be an excuse, but for many people see it as an excuse to be an asshole, right? I can say what I want. Um, I have to go pee. I'll be right back. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't want to edit it, so I just left it in there. There's only a couple. There's only a couple more. Caitlin, I remember you being visibly upset that I made you watch those two things in class, but you came through with a great comparison. Jeff, comparing these guys to Jeff Dunham, I think was awesome. Because Jeff Dunham is like, why does he exist? But he uses the puppets, like all of his puppets are these racial stereotypes, and he thinks he gets away with saying whatever he wants, um, by using the puppets to say this stuff. And a lot of his stuff is super just lowbrow, lowest common denominator, racist, just bullshit that people still, I mean, they still lap it up. I don't know how, but I think that was an interesting take on the whole. The comedian can, like, the comedian can say whatever they want for the most part, but what do you do with that extreme freedom, like that empowering freedom? What do you do with it? Well, I I disguise, you know, racist and sexist undertones with puppets, and I just say the word fuck a lot, and I, you know, use it to spread bigotry and ignorance worldwide. That's what I do with it. So they don't have a responsibility to do it, but they have an opportunity to be sort of to take that privilege as and hold it not sacred, but do something better with it. And Jeff Dunham is just a perfect extension of that. Like, you can't be Dice Clay now because of the culture and how it is sort of adapted, I guess. But Jeff Dunham has found a way, so to speak, which is through ventriloquism, I would have thought. Um, and then Tom brought up the way Dice curses, which we kind of overlooked, but I think Tom said something like, I don't mind cursing, but I did when Dice did it. And basically because he was just cursing for cursing's sake. And he's for shock's sake, or to be shocking. Like, that's just not the reason to do anything, is because you can, right? So I thought that was an interesting distinction. And finally, um, Lindsay thought Dice had a decent voice. I laughed when I read that first. I thought singing voice or rap voice. I didn't really know what you meant, Lindsay, but still, I'm like, okay. And but then your whole hairy ass paradox, where Kinison and Dice were both like, how can you be attracted to a hairy ass? But they never ask how women are attracted to men, right? It's only men being attracted to men's hairy asses, but never asking how women, like some woman had sex with you somehow. How did that go about? So that's an interesting irony to end on. I'll give you guys a bonus word for extra credit if you post a comment here. Use the word financial. No, that's bad. Um, use the word rascal. Yeah. Use the word rascal, and I'll put extra credit towards your final grade. Other than that, bye.